Let's talk about statistical outliers. Who are the tops? Who are the bottoms? Is there any reason to expect that they'll continue in that way? Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and like Tony Parker, I have a 24/7 Nando's in my house. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms, so give it a thumb, give it a double bang, leave your comments. I'm recording this one well in advance. So, if something bizarre, outrageous, ridiculous, seismic has occurred, I don't know. I'll talk about it when I go back. What I'm talking about in today's show is something that I think is important. I talk about this a lot. I talk, especially on the top end of things, when we're talking about the guys who are outliers, because it's very easy to say, you're very good at this category, and you can still be very good at it, but how far do you fall? And the top end guys often can outsize their production or outsize their rankings in some certain fantasy rankings, making them appear better than they are. So we want to see who those top end and bottom end guys are. Is there reasons for that to expect that changes, or that it's weird, or that it sits in that position? And how does that impact how we value players moving forward? That is what we're going to be talking about. So we might as well get into it. We're going to be covering the main fantasy categories, as well as 3-point percentage and usage in this as well. This is being released allegedly on Bastille Day, but I'm recording it on July the 2nd. So there you go. All right, let's take a look. Let's start with just the number one most visible category that there is, and that is points. You might know, and what I did here on this is I didn't just use the entire spectrum of the NBA, especially for the bottom levels or even some of the percentage stuff. I did the top 120 players on a per-game basis using my Durant category rankings to give us an idea of the guys who generally matter. Like, you could do top 150, you can do top 200, like whatever, because top 200, those guys will be cycled on and off rosters throughout the season. But top 120 is the core main group of guys who are going to be used and started when they're healthy for the majority of the time, like give or take. But I think that's a decent way to cut it off. So we'll talk about the top, and obviously the top 5 is going to be the top 5 in counting stats no matter what sample size you use. The top 5 scorers in the NBA. Number 1, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 32.7. Number 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 30.4. About Shai, like, what's going to change? Not much. Giannis interesting because, obviously, there's changes on that squad. Damian Lillard is not there. Brook Lopez is not there, but Miles Turner is there. Not that that means much, but we know that, well, it doesn't mean much from a scoring perspective for Giannis, but we know that Lillard's not there. Giannis possibly ramps his usage. Scores more. Shai, could he drop a little bit? I guess it's possible. Does he need to prove himself after winning MVPs coming out of his ass and winning the championship? Can he scale that back? That's also possible. Number 3. This is where things get really interesting, I think. And we're going to talk about this guy's name a lot. And he's big chungus, Nikola Jokic. We know he's going to go pick one in nearly every draft. He was 3rd in the league in scoring, 29.6. And the criticism of Jokic in the past has been that he doesn't score enough. He doesn't take control of things. He's not that number one guy. He helps in all those other areas, and we love him for that. 29.6 is a huge number from him. He also did it on the only player out of that top 5 who had a less than 30 usage rate. He had 29.6 usage, somehow identical to his scoring. But when we talked about the Nuggets in the season review show, and we talked about Jokic, so much of what he did was based on incredibly high minutes. And we'll talk about a few other things with him as well. So I'm not saying that he's not going to be the number one guy, but I am saying that there are a few things to look at and go, will Jokic maintain 29.6 usage? Yes, they've made a switch. Michael Porter and Cam Johnson switching over. Not sure that does much for usage rates. But just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on what Jokic has to do. Keep an eye on how they use him, especially now that theoretically they've got a better backup center in there. Luka Doncic at 28.2. Doncic's scoring numbers were basically identical on the Lakers or on the Mavericks, so no real change there. It was I think it was actually 28.2 on both teams. And then Anthony Edwards, 27.6. I guess you could say there's scope for that to improve, but that team is sort of similar, I guess. Again, I don't know if anything has changed, but Edwards can easily be there. Or, given the fact that his shooting percentages and volume from 3 jumped up so much, if either of those two things drop, there is a possibility that actually falls off. So while we look at that and go, Ant was great, he was the 5th highest scorer in the league, there are a few things on that where I'd be like, yeah, let's just see. In terms of guys in the top 120 who did not score, so if you're looking for punt points guys who get boosted, we're talking Chris Paul at 8.8. I don't think that Paul's able to find those minutes this season. Draymond Green at 9, fine, I'm sure he'll be that. The only one of these 5 guys that played over 30 minutes a night, though, was the third player here, and that's Herb Jones. And we'll talk about Herb quite a bit on this show. Herb averaged 10.3 points in 32 minutes. The Pelicans team, we know it's a disaster. Is Herb going to see more usage and score more? Can he do that? We also talked about him on the Shooting Changes show, about his... actually, I don't even know if that show's coming out yet, but it'll come up. But the way that his shooting numbers vary so much. So Herb is one of those guys that when you're talking and you see 9-cat fantasy rankings for someone like Herb Jones, you'll see him push very high. But understanding you are going to be put at a pretty significant disadvantage due to scoring. Nick Claxton's at 10.3 and somehow Grant Williams at 10.4. Remember Grant Williams? He plays for the Hornets. He'll be back from a torn ACL. And where his minutes fall is an interesting question. Will they play him some small ball center given their dearth of options? Shout out to the cockroach Mason Plumlee. But they're your bottom 5 guys. And remember, all those guys will get certain boosts in certain categories and make them look better than they are at times. But you have to understand the deficiencies and the strengths that you're getting to take advantage of that. In terms of 3-pointers, of course, it's Steph at the top. 4.4 threes, just continues to be ridiculously good. At some point, I guess he'll drop off, but we're not really there, even though there has been some drops in his game, but we know that he brings these threes. That's what I was talking about with Anthony Edwards, though. 4.1 triples. And he hit him at like a crazy rate. There is no guarantee that those numbers hold. So that's one where I'm like, I am almost certain I will not project Anthony Edwards to shoot or hit 4.1 threes per game. I don't know what I'll project him at, but I'm pretty sure it won't be that number. So that's one of these ones in terms of the outlier, like Jokic in the points. I go, we'll see where that goes. And Edwards in the threes, like he could still be a 3.6 guy. He could still be 3.5, which is Luka Doncic on the list, the 5th highest guy. But again, going from 2nd to 5th, losing over half a 3 a game, it has an impact. That's 1.5 points. It takes you to 25.5 points instead of 27 points. Those things make a difference, even though, hey, I was 2nd, now I'm 5th. Who cares? You do care, because it does have an impact, especially at the pointy end. I was very shocked that Brandon Miller was 3rd in the NBA in threes, 3.9 per game. LaMelo was 3.8. Both these guys weren't particularly efficient, but the Hornets launched a million of them. And now that there's Colin Sexton's on that team, we'll see what happens with Con Knipple, another really good shooter. Will these guys get the same, or get the same, I guess, not necessarily leniency, but will they be making almost 4 threes a game? I'm not sure they will. I'm not sure they will. So keep an eye on that with Brandon Miller. That I don't think many of you would have realized, and I know I didn't before I prepared this, that Miller was actually right up there in 3-pointers made. And then Luka's down there at 3.5 made threes. He actually made 3.6 a game with the Lakers, so obviously slightly higher, not that much. In terms of 3-pointers made, I did it as a minimum 0.1 per game because the guys that hit 0 a game didn't want to talk about them. Zion, 0.1 a game. I don't think that's ever going to be a part of his game. Walker Kessler, another one of these names that's so important to talk about in fantasy because you're going to see his name mentioned in a lot of bottom 5s and a lot of top 5s. And overall, you can smoosh the numbers together and get a certain rank, and you'll appear as high as you want him to appear and how you want to view those rankings. But it is very specific because you are going to be at a disadvantage in multiple categories, huge disadvantage. And you're going to be put at an advantage in others. And how you want to address that is important. And Zion's a little bit the same. Not quite as extreme as Walker Kessler, but they are similar. DeAndre Ayton hit 0.2, the snowman. Will he be able to... I don't know where he's playing at the moment, but I don't think he's ever going to develop into a shooter. Yanni at 0.2, that's never going to come back. And then the delicate dancer, Alperen Şengün, only 0.3 threes per game. And so I think some of the issue that we all think that Houston got better, and I agree with that, but like Capella and Adams, and you're playing Amen Thompson, like how does that shooting all work? I know they've got Kevin Durant, but Şengün needs to be better. He needs to, he's attempting threes at not an okay rate, but like a rate where you think he should be better than this. But only 0.3 threes per game for Alperen Şengün. We'll come back. We've got rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks to get to. Before I get there, though, today's episode is brought to you by Hungry Root. Meal planning and grocery shopping can be annoying. Busy schedules, you've got picky eaters, you're trying to be healthy sometimes. Well, that's why Hungry Root is great because it takes the stress out of planning by filling your cart for you with personalized groceries and meal options depending on what you like or need. They've got their smart cart technology to recommend groceries, recipes, and even the supplements that are tailored to your preferences. You might be one of these genetic losers that can't have dairy or gluten or some other stupid thing you can't even eat because it makes my tummy feel sore. Hungry Root is going to be able to deal with that and provide all of the recipes and groceries that you need. You've got the quick quiz on there, and right away, Hungry Root will start recommending meals and snacks that you want. The time that you save on this with the recipes that are fast as well is another huge advantage of Hungry Root. So take advantage now of this exclusive offer. And for a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code is LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. Hungry Root, get rooting. Not an official tag. All right, let's talk more about these outlier situations, the top fives, the top bottoms, and the top 120 fantasy players, and how we can assess that as we move forward. We're at rebounds. Number one is the big fella in Sacramento, Domantas Sabonis. He grabs rebounds. He's very good at it. Well done. He will continue to do that, I am pretty sure. We also saw that Doug Christie did not ease off the minutes, so there's no reason to think that Sabonis at 13.9, well clear of everybody else, won't be pretty high again. Right? We expect that that'll be the case. The next couple are pretty interesting because Karl-Anthony Towns at 12.8 and the big chungus himself, Nikola Jokic, 12.7. They were able to get these minutes, all these rebounds, because their minutes were well up. We know that Towns moving to center was a big part of that. But they're going to have, at this point, a healthy Mitchell Robinson. And you may know it, but I don't at this point. It does seem like it'll be Mike Brown, and he's a heavy minutes legend as well, not quite Tom Thibodeau, but it does seem like Mike Brown might get that chance. But it is fair to argue whether Towns will play as much at center this season as he did last season, meaning, do those numbers drop? And that means Towns, who was a first-round guy for a big chunk of the season, what if he's a 10.4 guy? I would say that there is a reasonable suggestion that is possible. What if the new coach plays him 32 minutes a night instead of 34? Again, probably if it's Mike Brown, probably won't be. But Towns at that number might not hold. And same with Jokic, who played 1 million minutes. And now, is Jonas Valanciunas better than Dario Saric? Better than DeAndre Jordan? Yeah. So can they be a little bit more cautious and don't burn Jokic out and play him 34 minutes instead of 36? And then he becomes an 11.5 rebound guy. I think that's all possible. And again, we're talking like that's a 10% dip in the numbers. And 10% is still 10%, and it impacts the pointy ends of values. The next one, number 4, another guy that could easily be impacted, and that's Ivica Zubac. He was at 12.6 rebounds. I like Zubac. He's one of the best players in terms of defense in the NBA last season, all defense first-team guy, one of the best, most improved players, got a lot of minutes, and then they signed Brook Lopez. Now, Lopez is a little washed, but it doesn't mean that Zubac plays 34 minutes and Lopez plays 14. I think that they'll pull back a little bit on Zubac. So again, don't be surprised if you get a 10% cut in rebound rate, which will impact the numbers. And part of the appeal of Zubac, which I've said many times last season, was you got him so late and he was an unbelievable value. And if you draft him this season at that value, you're probably going to get dicked. Like, it's not going to work that well, I don't think. The last one there is Walker Kessler at 12.2, and he played the fewest minutes out of these top 5, just 30 minutes a game. Now, we don't really know how the Jazz are going to approach that front court. Well, I don't at this point. It's still going to be very confusing. They're still going to be bad. And I still think that fake injuries are on the table. And I just don't think it'll be an in one game, out the next rest. I think it'll be, hey, your wrist is a little bit sore as Austin and Danny Ainge jump up and down on it. Maybe you want to sit out the last 5 weeks of the season. So just be aware of that. So Kessler may play some more minutes, but also maybe they don't ever want him playing more. But with the possibility that Kessler does play a little bit more and Zubac, Jokic, and Towns all drop, you could be seeing Kessler up at number 2 here. Like, really easily. With that, that's not too much of a challenge, I don't think. The bottom 5 rebounders. There's not much to talk about here. This is just this standard list of guards that's always here. Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Jalen Brunson, and Jordan Poole. Interestingly enough, 3 of those 5 players have been traded this last offseason. Let's talk about assists. Trae Young led the NBA in assists. 11.6 actually. That's a career high for Trae. There was no DeJounte Murray, so we knew that he was going to have to do more ball handling. Now, they did bring in Gilgeous-Alexander Walker this season. He's not really a point guard. Trae Young should be able to maintain that level of passing, I think. Like, no reason to suggest. But also, again, That is well and above anything he's done. I think he was at 10.5 the previous season. Still would have led the league. So it is very simple for Trae Young to lead the league in assists and still lose 10% of his value in that category. And that's why we talk about the outliers, because look at that difference there. 11.6 to 10.2 to 9.2 between 1, 2, and 3. So Trae can go from 11.6 to 10.3, and he still would have led the league this season. But if you lose 1.4 assists going from 9 down to 7.6, well, you go from 4th to 25th or something, right? That's the impact that we can see by losing that amount, and it still has an impact. Jokic was next at 10.2, also a career high, and we've talked about him already, and we're going to talk about him more, don't worry, because he shot the absolute lights out. He played 1 million minutes, career high in minutes, and career high in assists. Does the addition of Cam Johnson mean fewer assists for Jokic? Not really, but if they're a better team and he doesn't have to play as many minutes, that could come down. Tyrese Halliburton's not going to play next season. That was actually a big drop from him down to 9.2. Again, one of those guys that was a comfortable 10 assists per game player, 10.5, 11, and he averaged 9.2. That's an impact. Cade had a big jump, 9.1. How's he going to go, given they lost a lot of their big shooting threats from the previous season in Hardaway and Beasley? Will those numbers drop down? What about now that Jaden Ivey is healthy for the year? I still think Cade is probably going to be a first-round guy, but just be aware of that. And then Jim Harden at 8.7. Now, with Kawhi theoretically being there to start the season, could Harden be more of a facilitator and see that number jump? I think that is possible. I think his usage could fall, but I think the assist numbers could rise for Jim, and it wouldn't be crazy to me that Harden is second behind Trae Young. I don't know that I'll project it that way, but I wouldn't be crazy to think that. Or maybe I would, but for other reasons. Let's talk about the bottom 5 in assists. Keegan Murray averaged 1.4 assists per game because he just doesn't have the ball. And how, again, maybe the Kings have done something different. Is DeRozan still there? Levine there? Monk there? Sabonis there? When is Keegan touching it? He is one of those guys that is overrated by 9-cap metrics because of the incredibly low turnovers, yet I still can't really point to what he does that's good. And at some point, we need to see something. The passing for him is really bad. Tari Eason, also an incredibly narrow-visioned, tunnel-visioned, focused guy. And I think, and I know people will disagree with this, I think it is harder for, even though they lost Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks, I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Tari Eason to fully break out this season. Durant is there. They paid Jabari Smith. They brought in Clint Capella for whatever reason. Eason doesn't have a clear breakout minute pathway. Lauri Markkanen, the highest usage player on this list, averaged 1.5 assists on 24 usage. That's incredibly bad. Now, he's not a good passer. We know this. This team is going to be bad. I still think that 1.5 assists from Lauri it's clearly bad, right? But I don't think that explains who he is as a player. I think he's not good as a passer, but I think that can go up. So while we look at those numbers and we can talk about how bad Lauri Markkanen actually was last season, it still could be a really weird season, and he might not even be playing for Utah by the time I'm talking about this. That number could very comfortably double without him actually becoming a better passer. Miles Turner, 1.5 assists. He's never going to be a passer. I don't think that's going to change in Milwaukee. I wonder how Glenn Rivers' offensive mastermind is going to utilize him. I don't think that changes too much. But yeah, he can easily... Look, it's 1.9 assists is bad. But you go from 1.5 to 1.9, it's sizable. It's a change. And the last guy there is the snowman, DeAndre Ayton. He wouldn't say I've ever been confusing him for a Nikola Jokic type passer. And he is on that list and will likely remain there. What about steals? This is where we get the largest variance year on year. We've talked about this. Free throws and steals are the biggest year on year variance. And I will do a study on this from last season as well and do a show on that at some point. Dyson Daniels averaged 3 steals a game. It's an insane number. Is it possible that he averages 3 steals again? Sure. Would I bet it? No. I would say that he could still easily lead the league and get 2.6. But he could get 3 a game. That is very possible. But it's just not a likely event. His steal rate went through the roof this season, and not even because of more minutes. So that is one of those ones. If you are banking on Dyson Daniels repeating, and his 9-cat straight values show you that he's the 14th best player, again, insane, do not touch him anywhere near that. You are banking on steals and rating at 3. And history suggests to us that it will not do that. DeJounte Murray is going to miss most of the season. He was at 2, and then Herb Jones at 1.9. Very interesting. The top 3 guys there, all with Pelicans connections. 2 of them played for the Pelicans, and 2 of them were traded for each other in Daniels and Murray. Herb is a very good defensive player. We know this. But also, go look at Herb Jones' history. You'll see that he had a 1.5 steal season. So with DeJounte Murray, 1.6. Murray also had, I think, a 2.1 season. So again, we talk about the variance and talk about the outlier numbers here. They can be very good players still and very good at this category and lose 25% of their value. So simply. 2 steals to 1.5 is 25% of your value in that category. And it still means you're good at it. Paul George, I know that he was a write-off for most of you last season, 4th in the league in steals at 1.8. So at least he was able to maintain that. And he was another one of those guys I mentioned in the shooting outlier show or shooting swing shows. Why couldn't he hit anything? Why was his 3-point numbers so bad? Is he just that bad? I don't think so. And you've already got the basis of really good steal numbers there. And here's another one for the Nikola Jokic. Let's see what happens. 1.8 steals, a career high. So Jokic not only averaged almost 30 points a game on 30 usage, had career high in assists and I think rebounds, but he also did it in steals and shot 41% from 3. So much of that is like, ooh, okay. Hard to see how it goes up from there. And that's when we talk about risk and who's going up or who's going down or who's maintaining. When you see all these things go career high, career high, career high, career high, well, that's an outlier number. That's an outlier number. And if there's all of those, it just takes 1 or 2 of them to drop by 10, 15%, and the value comes down. Again, Jokic will still go number 1 without any question. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But everything that he did last season, there was so many outliers in it. And he's an outlier player. But when he's an outlier compared to himself, well, we've got to have a level of skepticism of it, I think. So he sits there at 1.8 steals. What about the bottom end of things? Cam Thomas averaged 0.6. Now, he's going to play a full season. I'm guessing this season they're going to be terrible. Not going to suggest that Cam Thomas is going to focus a huge amount on defense, so you're not relying upon that. But here's where we talked about Walker Kessler before. You are, when you draft Walker Kessler and you consider the way that there is flaws in the way that a Yahoo ranking system is projected out, right? That you will see that some of the big numbers, the rebounds, or more importantly, the field goal percentage or the blocks, it provides these huge Z-score numbers that make him look a lot better than he is. But understand that you're taking on some real negatives. Can you recover from them? Sure, but you have to understand that it's not just the all-in-one number that determines everything. So Kessler in the bottom here again. Brook Lopez at 0.6 steals. That has a chance to come down because I don't think his minutes are going to be as high. Michael Porter Jr., the poop cookie, at 0.6 steals. He has had 1 year where he played only 9 games. He averaged 1 steal a game. Every other year, 0.6 to 0.5. This is who he is. He's bad at steals. It's not going to really change on this Nets team. So I think he's got a chance to bump his usage and bump his scoring, and maybe probably he's rebounding in Brooklyn. But doesn't mean that this stuff's going to happen or he's going to become a defensive dynamo. I don't think that's going to happen. And then Julius Randle, we know the double royal. He stinks at these things. He might have a weird 1.1 steal outlier season, but we don't bank on it. But again, it's how hard is it for him to jump 25% onto this and become a 1 steals guy? That's 1 every 3 games that he gets. Maybe, probably unlikely, but things happen. And those things can have outsized impact in terms of determining a value of a player. A few more categories to get to. Before we do that, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the summer is in full swing. Not here, it's pissing down. But summer is in full swing. Baseball, soccer, golf, NASCAR, WNBA. FanDuel is the best way to get in on all of that action. And when you're in on that action and you are paying attention, using your knowledge, you can do it in so many ways. You've got your spreads, you've got totals, you've got same game parlays, you've got live betting as well on FanDuel. So whatever it is, FanDuel is going to have it for you. Open the app and you check every day. They've got new daily promotions so you can check in on all-star games and futures and regular season contests and whatever it is and get in there and show to yourself what you know. So when you're in there making those same game parlays on your player props, get in with FanDuel. And if you are new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5. Get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, let's get through to the final grouping of these stats, the tops and the bottoms. Let's start with the tops of the block category. We know who's at the top. It's Victor Wembanyama. He averaged 3.8 blocks per game. And while I can look at Dyson Daniels as 3 steals per game and say it's probably coming down, I can look at Victor Wembanyama, and this is why he is so anomalous. All right, I look at that and go, that's shit, Vic. What are you doing? You could be a 4.5. And I don't think that's crazy. And that's part of the reason why, again, there are a few things with him in terms of drafting him in fantasy is that standard Z-score, standard scores will overvalue the impact of a 4-block guy. It'll tell you that he's that good. And he's very good. Don't get me twisted on that. But also, it will be one of those ones that if you weren't including blocks, he wouldn't be anywhere close to being that valuable. But he could easily this is not crazy. He could easily beat the next guy by 2 blocks per game. So meaning you would need to add, well, even looking at this, like it could be conceivable you could add Anthony Davis and Miles Turner, and that's equivalent to Wemby in blocks. Not exactly from last season, but it is possible. Everyone else, you're going to have some issues at somewhere. Walker Kessler, 2.4. Again, the name. He's in the tops and bottoms in nearly every category. You know what you're getting. He's a big Christmas tree. It's all bright greens and bright reds. And you have to understand that and have to understand how to make that work. Chet Holmgren at 2.2. Well, he should play more minutes this season because he won't be coming off a fractured hip. So could he go to 2.6? Or could we be in a situation where he's playing and out on the perimeter a little bit more and he's at 1.9? The one who is not really that immune to variance is going to be Wemby. Kessler a little bit, but I think Chet, even Anthony Davis and Miles Turner, the other 2 guys in the top 5 here, I think there's some variance risk here. We've seen it with Turner. He's been a 2.6 guy before, he's been a 1.9 guy before, and now he goes to a different team. Glenn Rivers. Will they use a different scheme? I would suggest that you'd want to bank, if you had to go over-under on Miles Turner 2 blocks a game, understand that Carlisle kept his minutes low and Glenn might play them higher, but also a different scheme. Like, you just probably want to go under on that. Just because it's a new team and new scheme. Now, he could go over it, but the odds would suggest you want to go under. As for Anthony Davis, he was at 2.2. Now, he averaged 2.2 blocks for the Lakers, and he averaged 2.2 blocks for the Mavericks. But it is, again, where we can look at that split and go, okay, well, nothing changed. But it did change. But how important is it? Because in Dallas, he played 9 games, and he played 30 minutes. But he still maintained the same block rate. So if he was to go to 34 minutes, would he be a 2.5 block guy? Or would the sample size then bring that down? And remember that for the large part of the time that he was playing in Dallas, Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively weren't there. They were injured. So another part of it. So it's possible we can go, well, Davis will play more minutes, but if he's playing at the 4, again, terrible idea, and then Cooper Flagg's next to him as well, and you got Gafford and Lively playing those other minutes at center, well, maybe the block rate actually plummets. So it's good to have the information that he played 9 games and we understand where it's at. Just saying, well, he averaged 2.2 blocks for Dallas and that's the same as the Lakers means he'll be the same. Absolutely not. Doesn't mean that at all. You can make an argument either way, but understanding, like, who was with him? Was Gafford and Lively there for those games? And how healthy was everybody? And where does the minutes increase offset that, maybe drop? Possibly. One of those intriguing things coming up. Let's talk about the bottom 5 in blocks. Again, no real need. We know who these guys are. They're the empty defenseless shooting guards. Anthony Simons, Cam Thomas, Colin Sexton, Emmanuel Quickley, and Jalen Brunson. All with 0.1 blocks per game. Cool. Top 5 in field goal percentage. The general rule I like to have is if someone is a 70% field goal guy, expect them to be worse. Jarrett Allen was at 70.6. 9cat rankings are going to overrate him. Jalen Duren at 69.2. I believe he was up from 61 the year before that. These guys can still be top 5 players, and you'll notice the 5th best player in field goal percentage is the big fella himself, Ivica Zubac, at 62.8. So you've got a scope of 8 percentage points between 1st and 5th. 8 percentage points between 62 and, what would that be, 54? All right, you're probably going to have 80, 90 guys in there, maybe not 80, but 50 guys. So Allen can go from 1st and be 4th. And still lose a lot. Zubac could go from 63 to 66 and go from 5th to 4th, but still gain a lot. The stratification at the pointy ends of things, that's how this distribution tends to work. So you got Gobert's one of the guys who's really always been around this level, but as he gets a little bit older, you're seeing a little bit of a drop. And again, any of these players, Allen, Duren, Gobert, Kessler, who are all sitting at 66 and above, if they come in with a 62 season, don't be surprised. In fact, you would bet on, especially Duren and Allen, dropping in field goals. It's just so hard to maintain that level for multiple seasons. It's not something that's a common occurrence. The bottom 5 guys, I think some of these names you'll be a little bit surprised about, but Jeremy Grant in the top 120 was the worst shooter. Now, this guy is trash. We know this. He might have been traded somewhere else. He's one of the worst fantasy contributors. There seems to be an understanding or an expectation that the Blazers will just run him off the bench even if he stays. I'm not sure that's true. And, as much as we can criticize Jeremy, okay, I do it quite a bit. I don't believe that he's going to be a 37% shooter. Now, he could still be terrible and shoot 43% from the field. But it's a huge jump. and it will add a lot more to his value. But his thing is going to be just tied to roll. Fred VanVleet's at 37.8. Again, that was terrible. It was a big drop. He could be a 40% guy, and it would help slightly. Keontae George at 39.1. I would hope that the big fella does something a bit more this season in year 3. You got to show something. That shooting is horrendous. I would hope we get a little bit more out of it. I'm not going to be convinced. DeJounte Murray out for most of the year. He was terrible before he was hurt. So this field goal percentage is not because of his injury. One of the things that you do expect when someone comes back from an Achilles or an ACL as they're trying to gain stability and confidence in their ligaments and joints is that their field goal percentage drops in that initial return. I think Murray could actually be the outlier to that because it was so bad before the injury that it would be pretty hard for him to be below 39% as a shooter next season. So there could be some, we go, well, we're a bit worried about minutes and how he is and when he comes back, but I would think that the shooting numbers for him should be better. And then Brandon Miller, who was a big surprise earlier on, we talked about most threes made, he was a 40% shooter because he wasn't that efficient. He just took a million threes. His 2-point percentage wasn't that good. He needs to get that number way up as well. And this is going to be a pivotal year for him in year 3. Can he become like a 46% guy? That's what you need. You can't be a wing and a 40% shooter because he's not offering enough in other areas. But as we can see, there is plenty of scope for him to be still bad, but much better. Bad, but much better. And that's the same as VanVleet. The year before, 41 from the field. Bad, but much better. And there is scope for that to happen. If we talk about the other percentages in free throws, you know that you can basically rely upon Steph to be a 90% guy. 93.3 from the line, this is what he does. Anyone else who's a 90% guy, well, not anyone, there are a couple of exceptions, that you can have a level of trust on them. Kyrie Irving, 91.6, he was the 4th guy. Damian Lillard, 92.1, who at the time we're recording this, doesn't even have a team, and he won't be playing anyway. Chris Paul at 92.4. Paul's a good free throw shooter, but most of the time when I'm looking at a 90% guy, if it's Steph, I'll project him at 90. If it's Kyrie, I'll project him over 90. The others, I'll put him at like 88 or 89, because that's still good. But again, we're talking 4 percentage point drops. And if you're an 83 guy and you go to 79, well, that's a huge impact, yet it's the same differential. So Steph, we look at as 93, but if you look at someone, and Devin Booker's a great example of this. He had a couple of 91 seasons, then some 88 seasons, but that impacted his fantasy numbers because you weren't sitting as a top 5 guy. So we're not going to worry too much about Chris Paul and Damian Lillard. Even Kyrie's injured here. There are some concerns of drop, but even Steph might be a 90% guy, which impacts. The absolute polar bear here is Drew Holiday at 90.9. Absolutely no chance, I don't think, that Drew is a 91% free throw guy. I don't think that he's going to be a draftable guy in Portland. We need to get a little bit of an understanding of how they're going to run things with their rotations and is he even getting starters minutes, but I feel pretty good that Drew won't be a 91% free throw guy for this upcoming season. In terms of the bottom end of it, Nicky Claxton, 51. He just seemed to be pissed off all of last season. A million techs, ejections, flagrants. He just was bad. The second half of his season was better, and he is a better shooter than 51. Now, he's not a good shooter, but he's better. I would think that we could still see Nick Claxton as being a punt free throw-ish guy while improving 15 percentage points. Guess whose name is number 2? Yeah, it's the guy I've talked about in nearly every category, Walker Kessler. 52% from the line. Now, he is bad. He's a bad free throw shooter. I don't think he'll ever be good. But you'll also notice that only 3 of the guys in the top 120 are under 60%. So he could still be a 60% guy, 8 percentage point improvement, and still be a bottom 4 guy. This one also, I think, would surprise you, but Dyson Daniels at 59.3%. Remember, steals carried his stuff. You basically needed to be punting free throws while getting high steals. That's a weird combo. So while, again, totality of ranking and the outlier number of steals helps him, overall, and the value of him was got him off the waiver wire. You picked him at pick 130 or 110 or whatever. You can't do that now. So really focusing on the damage and the benefits of Dyson is way more important. Because when you're taking them at your 12th round pick, who cares? All right, you deal with it. But if you're investing a second round pick, yeah, that's bad. But if you're doing it even in round 4, you got to be more cognizant of these things. And then old mates, Giannis Antetokounmpo at 61.7. We just have to understand that he's probably never going back to being that 75% guy. And he's going to get 1 million attempts, and his usage is going to go up this season, so even more. And you have to understand that you are going to be punting free throws if you've got him. Now, it is possible that you can be competitive with Giannis in free throws. It's possible. I've proven it. Doesn't mean you should, but you can do it. All right? It doesn't mean you should. And we understand how free throws are a variable category every single week. So there'll be weeks that you win it, guaranteed. And if you're in Roto, you do not have to get a 1 in that category. You can get a 6 or a 5. It is possible. It is actually possible to push yourself to a 9 or an 8 in Roto. But it just takes the right mix of players. Not always the best use of resources. And the last guy there is Rowan Barrett, who just continues to be a real drain in that area. He might not even be playing for our Toronto Raptors at this point, given that there's rumors of him being traded. He just, again, we are 6 years into his career and he's still bad at it. We just have to assume he's never going to be good. But he's also had seasons where he's been a 70% guy. So 63 to 70, I know that you guys know how to count. I was going to call it the alphabet of numbers. But that's not how numbers work, is it? We don't call it the alphabet. What do we call it? There's no name for it. Anyway, have I been recording too much today? Probably. In the alphabet of numbers, 63 to 70 is a decent difference. And 70 on that volume would still be bad. Now we talk about a few categories that aren't fantasy categories, but they are important. Let's talk 3-point percentage. Do you know that Zach LaVine was the best 3-point shooter inside the top 120 of fantasy rankings? 44.6. Yeah, you should bank on that falling a lot. Could he be a 40% guy? Yeah. And that's 5 percentage points down. You should bank on it falling a lot. Kevin Durant at 43%. Is Kevin Durant one of the best shooters of all time? Yes. Should you bank on 43%? No, you shouldn't. Karl-Anthony Towns, 42%. The best big man shooter of all time? Maybe. Is 42 a number to rely upon? Absolutely not. Stormer Norman Powell, 41.8. Now, maybe Norman Powell, he's been consistently around that 40 mark. But again, 41.8 to 40 seems like no difference. It seems like the same. But it isn't the same. It's different by about 2 percentage points. And if Norman Powell shoots 39.4, still considered an awesome number on really high volume, even though his volume will come down. It matters. That is why that's why I focus on these outliers, because these players will still be good. There's no one suggesting that LaVine or Durant or Towns or Powell are bad shooters. No one suggests that. But it's saying, hey, you've got a lot of room here where these guys can fall off. And that's where we get to Jokic again. Jokic has had seasons of 34% shooting. He shot 41.7. So not only were his minutes through the roof, not only was usage up at 30, not only was his rebounds a career high and he averaged double-digit assists, which was a career high, and 1.8 steals, he also shot 42 from 3. So when we talk about Jokic and go, how can he get better? The answer should be absolutely he can't. He just can't. There are too many outlier numbers compared to Nikola Jokic that will come down. Whether they all come down or not, I don't know. But steals, 3-point percentage, minutes, assist rate, rebounds, scoring, usage, all could fall. They probably all won't fall, but they all could fall. And I don't think there's any other categories of those you go, actually, that's going to improve. And that's, again, why I think the outlier stuff is really useful to have in your head. For guys that attempted at least 1 3-pointer per game, these are the bottom 5. Alperen Şengün at 23.3. Now, he is not going to be a good 3-point shooter. I think we're aware of that. But look at that's a gigantic gap, man. That's also maybe a little bit of a concern when you've got him and Adams and Capella and the third name on this list, Amen Thompson at 27.5 and then Fred VanVleet shooting 37% overall from the field. Then maybe we want some guys who can shoot a little bit more, and obviously having Kevin Durant there is useful. But that Şengün number, if he was bad at threes again next season, but shot 29.9, it's a gigantic W. It's just such a big improvement. Scott Barnes at 27.1. Now, he was a key, not that he was an outlier top 5 3-point shooter, but we looked at the change in his shooting from the year before. We go, bloody hell, he improved so much. Do we buy it? Well, the answer was no, we shouldn't have. Do we buy that Barnes is a 27% shooter? No, I don't buy that. He had a wrist issue at the end of the season, not that that's all of this. But yeah, the realistic situation for Barnes is he's probably a 33 or 34 guy. So while he was very disappointing this season, again, if you're betting, will Barnes be at 27 or will he jump up by 3 or 4 percentage points? I would say he jumps up by 3 or 4 percentage points. So yeah, there is that inbuilt random, what am I trying to say? Rebound sort of number for Barnesy. Amen Thompson basically almost doubled his 3-point percentage and he's still bad. Could he ever be a 33 guy? I don't think over a long-term period, no. I think he's more of a 30 or 29% shooter. So is he at peak 3-point shooting powers? Not quite, but he's not that far off. Anthony Davis was such a great idea that you play him alongside Gafford and Lively, isn't it? 28.2. He cannot shoot threes anymore. Yet you're playing him at the 4. He cannot shoot threes anymore. Could he become a 31 guy? Yes. and that's again why we talk outliers. 31 is still bad. On the volume he takes them, it's still bad, but it's an improvement. And then this one, like, what the hell? Kelly Oubre, 29.3. Like, where he is in the Sixers rotation, I don't know, because there's theoretically guys are going to play more games, and I still struggle to understand what Oubre does that's a positive that teams love him, and the fact that he picked up an $8 million player option suggests that he wasn't going to get that on the open market. That number, though, will almost certainly improve. Will he get opportunities to make it mean anything? Also, probably not. Let's talk usage. Top 5 usage guys. Number 1, LaMelo Ball. At some point, LaMelo Ball will not be the highest usage player. He was at 35.7. That's a very big number. Luka Doncic is next at 35.1, and then Shai is next at 34.8. Now, there is some talk that guys with this high of a usage or heliocentricity can't win titles. Now, obviously, Giannis at 34.5 won a title. Shai at 34.8 won a title. Luka at 35.1 made the finals. Didn't win a title, but he made the finals. So there is success in this model. The two other guys there who are standing out are LaMelo Ball at 35.7 and Zion Williamson at 33.9. Now, Jordan Poole does join the Pelicans with DeJounte Murray gone, but also CJ McCollum gone, so I don't really see why Zion's number would dip that much. They played him limited minutes down the stretch. It kept him around 29 to 30, and the ball was in his hands a lot. He's going to have to do a lot of that because some of the guys they signed and some of the moves they made don't make sense. So Zion's going to do a lot of that. And I think LaMelo's got a chance to actually drop from that number 1 spot. Brandon Miller maybe does more. Miles Bridges. We see what they do with Colin Sexton arriving, and then Con Knipple, the Areola, in that mix as well. Where does he fit? Where do those touches go? So I would think that like Luka could hold there, Shai could hold there. Look, there might be small changes. Yanni actually probably jumps. Yanni might be the number 1 guy, but LaMelo could easily fall out of this top 5 list. In terms of the top 120 fantasy players, let's wrap it up by looking at the bottom 5 in usage. And these are all guys that are going to have a standout skill somewhere else. Rudy Gobert, it's blocks and field goals. We know this. Chris Paul, it's assists, but his minutes probably won't be there. Shockingly enough, Walker Kessler's here again, 13.8. Will Walker Kessler ever demand more usage? Don't think so. Herb Jones, 14.3. Again, will he ever be able to demand more usage, or will it make sense? Probably not. And the other name in here is Toumani Camara at 14.4. Now, Camara was incredibly efficient this season. He does not take many shots. Their team is still weird. Scoot, Drew, Shaden, Denny, Grant, the centers. Now, maybe other moves have been made. I think Camara is going to start. Do we actually think that Toumani Camara can ever even push to like average usage? Could he get to 18 usage? Is his offensive game ever going to be good enough? I have my doubts, and I do worry that if they push more offensively from him, that some of the high efficiency stuff doesn't stick. So I'd be somewhat cautious, but all these guys, these low usage players whose rankings get outsized in certain spots because of these numbers, just be aware of that when you have this low usage, it is going to have an impact, especially in 9-cat rankings because turnovers are a part of usage, and it will artificially bump up some of the valuations of these players. And that is my outlier show. If you like or don't like, just hit the thumb anyway. No one cares. Just do it either way. Leave your comments down below. Tell me what you think about some of those things. The appearance of the players on multiple lists like Jokic, Kessler, Jones. Let me know what you think about it. I told you to subscribe already. Just do it again maybe. Or unsubscribe and resubscribe. No, don't unsubscribe. Just keep it subscribed. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.